Once you walk onto that mainland, there's no rescues.
There are many kinds of death. Infected and non-infected alike. This is a glorious day.
What's going on? Jimmy, sit still, keep quiet, and do not move.
You know, I feel he's a bit young.
He's ready. Day of judgment.
Look at what's in front of you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Fresh Cuts. This is Mike. Joining me, as always, it's Mr. Venom. What's up, Venom?
Greetings and salutations, naked zombies. Yes, I'm doing pretty well. How the hell are you doing, Mike? I'm doing as well as I can be after I'm doing as well as I can be after seeing so much zombie peen.
You got zombie dong and went back for seconds.
Oh my god, I can't believe I did too.
I went to a local horror con this weekend, and I was finally able to track down a copy of Severin's Four Flies on Grey Velvet release, which I've been after for a while, not wanting to pay like the crazy amount it costs because I don't know if it's officially out of print or just they haven't made another run of it, but because like if you try to find
it's
it
out of
online,
print. They haven't
Okay.
done a run.
Yeah, that makes sense. There is another 4K release, and I was kind of using this local con because I know the con that comes here every year, they have a pretty good physical media vendor, and I kind of said in my head, okay, this is gonna be my last chance. They have it. I'll get the other 4K release that's out there. It, it's good from the reviews. Like, you know, if you just want the movie on 4K without the bells and whistles, it would do, but the Severin one's really like the premiere one. So on my last chance, they had it, so that was good. But other than that, just a regular old Sunday today. So also with us, it's Dawn. What's up, Dawn?
What's going on? Not to give too much away, but for those that know me, my saying for movies has always been tits and dicks for everyone. I may have to revise that after this week. I may have to stretch that to human tits and dicks for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. And then yeah, Four Flies on Grey Velvet. What I meant to say is I'm not gonna really talk much about the movie. This fresh cuts, but when we record the main show, I'll talk more about that. But we are obviously, well, I guess maybe not obviously for people who haven't seen it, but for anyone who has seen it, we're talking 28 years later, the third entry, but also part of a new trilogy that's set to come. And I think the next entry is already filmed and will be released in early 2026. So I guess keep that in mind. And everyone should be kind of familiar with where we are up to this point in I guess the mythology or whatever, the world building that 28 days and weeks gave us. So we don't really need to get into a whole lot of that, although if we need to for reference points, that's fine. But 28 years later, the synopsis I'm going to grab says a group of survivors of the rage virus live on a small island. When one of the group leaves the island on a mission into the mainland, he discovers secrets, wonders, and horrors that have mutated not only the infected but other survivors. Okay, pretty decent. I saw like almost a paragraph and I was a little worried, but it keeps it.
We've definitely done worse and more
Yeah.
spoiler filled. We've definitely done more spoiler filled ones than that.
Yep. All right. So we will start with our general thoughts as always. So, Venom, what did you think of 28 years later?
Just to give a little bit of backstory on the first two movies, just in case people are interested in my opinion, I was not that big a fan of the very first movie, 28 Days Later. I liked it. I could recognize that it was a great movie, but it had story elements that I don't enjoy. In a world where George Romero and The Walking Dead exist, I don't need any more humans are worse than zombies in an apocalypse type scenarios. I'm done with it. I'm sick of it. And granted, the first movie was in 2003, I believe, which is what, 22 years ago. So maybe I wasn't as sick of the trope back then. But when I saw 28 Days Later in theaters, I just remember thinking, nah, it's too much. It's not enough infected and too much military and just shitty humans, blah, blah, blah. The eco-terrorists at the beginning who released the rage monkey, all that shit. And then 28 Weeks Later comes along, and I end up absolutely falling in love with that movie. I adore that film. Easily my favorite of the franchise, easily the best cold open of the franchise, and that includes this one, and I'll talk about that during our walkthrough. My favorite score of the franchise is 28 Weeks Later. Up until this movie, I would say my favorite cast was 28 Weeks Later, but I think the cast of this movie kind of trumps it, specifically two very important performances in the film, which again, I'll get to in a little bit. So that's a little bit of backstory on the 28 Days, Weeks Later for me. Not a big fan of the first one, absolutely adore the second one. And now we come to 28 years later, and I enjoyed the movie overall. It's good to see Danny Boyle back behind the camera, since he didn't actually direct the second movie. So his, film style, his filming DNA is definitely all over this one. Let's talk about what the movie did right and what I feel it didn't do right. First and foremost, this movie does something that Zombieland 2 famously did, and that's introduce new types of infected. I'm not going to get into those types right now. That might be a little bit of a spoiler. So if you've already seen the movie, then you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, go check it out and, come back for our review, for the rest of our review, so you can get our thoughts on the new infected types that came in. But I did enjoy both of the new types that were introduced in this movie. The kills and gore, I got to say, this is probably the goriest of the trilogy. I did rewatch Days and Weeks this week before going to see this one. And I saw this one twice this weekend. Today was my second watch of it. Literally, I got out of the theater a couple of hours ago, so it's nice and fresh in my head. Man, there is a Mortal Kombat fatality in this movie that absolutely made me scream in the theater. Scream of joy, not, a scream of of being terrified or anything. When a character does Sub-Zero's fatality, and those of you who are as old as I am and remember the first two Mortal Kombat games, you'll remember Sub-Zero's fatality. It is literally duplicated exactly in this movie. And it gave this old gamer's heart just a wonderful dose of dopamine. I loved it. It happens twice in the movie. It happens 3 times in the movie, once to an animal, 2 times to a human, and I loved it all 3 times. So like I said, the kills and the gore overall, I really, really enjoyed. The performances, these performances, and honestly, you could say the performances in all 3 movies in this trilogy are great, going back to Cillian Murphy in the first movie. But man, Ray Fiennes, I absolutely adore Ray Fiennes in this movie. Our young actor, Alfie Williams, just another amazing performance. I have some issues with some of the decisions that Spike made in the first act of the film, which of course we'll talk about later on. But overall, he didn't really annoy me too much. Anybody who knows me and has been listening for a long time knows that I'm not the biggest fan of kids in horror movies. They tend to kind of ruin the pacing for me. But we get a quick scene with kids in this one, with multiple kids. That's our cold open. And then, of course, Spike's performance throughout the film. I thought he did a really great job, going from this scared little kid at the beginning of the movie to almost a badass warrior at the end of the movie. So the character progression, the character arc, I thought was really, really well done for Spike. Isla, Spike's mother, played by Jodie Comer, Another really cool performance, especially because she's sick. Her character is sick throughout the entire movie, and she's having little mental lapses throughout the film, and she plays it off so well. It's so well done. I can't get over it. Aaron Taylor Johnson, of course, kick-ass, playing Spike's father in this one. Unfortunately, we only really get him for the first half of the movie. Some people might not have that much of an issue with that. I actually like this character despite some of his shortcomings, which again we'll talk about later on. But overall, I thought it was a great performance. A guy who basically grew up in this environment. Don't forget, 28 years later, we've been dealing with the zombie apocalypse or the infected apocalypse for 28 years now. So obviously, there's going to be like I said, with the mutations and people living their entire lives in this world. Like, Aaron Taylor Johnson in this movie literally looks like he's maybe 35 at the oldest, which means he was a child when this zombie apocalypse started. So he vaguely remembers what life was like before this. Whereas Spike doesn't know at all. Spike was born in the middle of this thing. So obviously he's dealing with his thoughts, and there's a little bit of a back and forth between father and son. But like I said, we'll get into that here in a little bit. Cinematography, man, for those who don't know, this movie was shot on a bunch of iPhones. And when I say this, folks, don't think that that Danny Boyle just showed up on set, pulled out his iPhone, and just hit record. No. Obviously, the iPhone has loaded with attachments, lenses, white balance, color correction, stabilizers. I mean, I actually did watch a behind the scenes filming on this film, and yeah, when you see the iPhone with all the attachments on it, it looks like a big old Hollywood camera from like the 70s or 80s, just without the film reels, obviously. So, yes, it's an iPhone, but the iPhone itself isn't doing the heavy lifting. It's going to be all the attachments and everything else to it. But despite all of that, like I said, there's some beautiful cinematography in here. There's one shot in particular that I would love to make a poster. I can't really talk about it right now because it kind of talks a little bit about one of the new infected types that I don't really want to talk about right now in case anyone hasn't seen the movie. But yeah, there's a shot in this movie of the sun going down in the background behind one of our new infected types, and it is a gorgeous shot. And I'm not exaggerating. If I could put this on a poster and put it in my living room, I absolutely would. It is a stunning shot. And that's not the only stunning shot in the movie. There are multiple great shots in this movie. So yeah, again, cinematography. The fact that this is an isolated story, obviously with 28 Days Later, it was a much broader story. Obviously it's the introduction of the virus. We see the UK basically get decimated. So the story of the original was a much grander scale. It was on a much grander scale. 28 weeks later and now 28 years later are both smaller stories where we're concentrating on very specific people and their adventures throughout this whole thing. We're not introduced to a lot of new people like we are in the first movie. So again, just the fact that this is an isolated story, a small cast, absolutely loved it. And well, small cast is the next item on my notes. Yeah, I love that there's not a whole lot of people to have to worry about. There's not a whole lot of like fodder, like, people for the infected to kill indiscriminately. Yes, there are some great kill scenes from infected, but it's definitely not like an all-out barrage, or a siege, if you will. So again, very cool. And then pacing, man, I gotta say, for a 2-hour movie, I was never bored. Like, the pacing is great. You get a cold open that's action packed right away, very reminiscent of like the Dawn of the Dead remake cold open, where it just goes right into it. There's no waiting. And then once we get into the body of our movie, once we make the jump, because our movie does actually start 28 years before when the virus started. And then we get a 28-year jump right after the cold open. So yeah, I was never bored with the pacing. There was just enough action to keep me satisfied. Whenever we would get one of those great kills, it would keep a smile on my face for at least 5 to 10 minutes after that, until the next action piece would come. But then even aside from the action, like, there are some legitimately heartbreaking moments in this movie that really work for me. For, you know, anybody who's been listening to me for a long time knows that I really enjoy dramatic horror. I love when horror movies bring the drama. You know, we've talked about trauma porn in the past, and I unapologetically love trauma porn. So yeah, the emotional scenes in this movie absolutely worked for me. Then we have to get into the things that this movie I feel didn't do well. First and foremost is going to be the ending. I hate the ending of this movie. The last scene of this movie completely changes like the tone and atmosphere of this whole thing. It's kind of like what I said about The Substance last year, how the last 15 minutes just kind of decimates all the serious tone that movie built up for the first hour and 45 minutes, and then it's basically just a horror comedy for the last few minutes. It's not quite as egregious here, but the final scene did kind of leave me scratching my head. Both times I watched the movie, I'm like, wow, like, wasn't there a better way to introduce this group? I don't know, it just felt kind of hokey at times. Even the song playing, I don't know if you guys noticed the song that was playing during that final scene, but it was like a song from a kids TV show. It really, really fucked with the tone of the whole movie. But obviously it sets up the next movie, since we already know this is a new trilogy. You know, we get that open-ended ending, which I am not a big fan of, folks. Even when you know you're about to make a trilogy, you can give us first and second chapters that have definitive beginning, middles, and ends. And this movie feels more like a middle chapter. Like, you know, everything has already started when the movie has begun, or at least after the time jump. And then at the end of the movie, nothing really much has changed other than a few more characters are dead and one character is now with a new group. Like, there's not a whole lot going on here for the most part. I mean, you know, we get some great zombie action, like I said, great kills, blah, blah, blah. Okay, this is the one that's going to be the biggest probably point of contention, because I know a lot of people have voiced that they like this. Fucking Bullet Time. It's 2025, and here is a movie loaded with bullet time. And I'm just like, what? Is it 1999? Am I watching The Matrix? Like, what the fuck is going on? And then I watched the special feature, like the behind the scenes making of it, and they show how Danny Boyle did that shot. He had like a board with like a whole bunch of iPhone cameras lined up around it, and the zombies, or, you know, the infected would be like in the middle of the ring of cameras. So, you know, the mere fact that he could do bullet time on a set of iPhones is impressive. I'll give him that. But bullet time in 2025, like, it didn't really add anything to me. Like, whenever they would kill an infected and didn't use the bullet time, I'm like, cool, that looked good, do more of that. But then they would just go back to the bullet time periodically, and it's like, once or twice is one thing, but man, about a dozen to 24 times throughout the movie, that's a little excessive for 2025, like I said. So I feel like Danny Boyle was so impressed with himself that he could do bullet time with iPhones that he put it in the movie as much as he possibly could. So, and that's going to be up to the individual. That might not bother some people. Like I said, I've already heard some reviews where people actually really, really like it, and that's good for you. That's awesome. For me, I thought it was a little excessive. The score of this movie was not nearly as strong as the last movie, in my personal opinion. Again, some people are going to disagree with me, and that's fine. I've already said 28 Weeks Later has my favorite score of the trilogy so far. This one felt like a step back, like not as much music and not as much intense music as the last movie. So yeah, a slightly weaker score for me. Some character decisions, obviously, I mean, it's a horror movie. If a horror movie doesn't have at least one character decision that I don't agree with, it's almost not going to be that great a movie. But yeah, there's some decisions made in the first act that I think are very short-sighted and irresponsible, even though in the long run it actually worked out for this character, the bad decisions that they made. But at the time, I just thought, what are you doing? You're endangering your entire fucking community just for this. And I don't know, I just didn't feel like in that world that's the decision that kid made. Now, granted, he's 12 years old in this movie. Spike is 12 years old. And, well, as 12-year-olds, we didn't always make the best decisions. So, obviously, I'll cut him a little bit of slack because of his age, because of the love for his mother, the disdain that he has for his father because of something that he witnesses earlier in the film. So, you know, blah, blah, blah. no Aaron Taylor Johnson in the second half of the movie. Like I said, I actually liked this character. I thought he was kind of like the anchor of the first half of the movie, and then that's it. We only see him very briefly during the final scene of the film. So, like for the second half of the movie, no Aaron Taylor Johnson, which again might not be a big deal for some people because the second half of the movie is where you get the majority of your zombie action and your kills and gore and everything. So, it may not bother some people as much, but I thought he was doing a really good job. I was getting into the character, even though he is a flawed character. He does one or two things that might be kind of questionable, which we'll talk about, but I still really like the character. And the last thing I want to talk about is something that I have in my pros and cons, and that is nudity. Now, I already talked about how did I already talk about it? I might not have. The point I'm trying to make is that I like that all the zombies are naked because when you think about it, it's been 28 years. Those that have been infected 25 plus years ago have been in the same clothes. Clothing is not meant to last 25 years on your body. Yes, you might have clothing in your closet that's that old, but that's clothing that you wear once, maybe twice, then wash it, put it in the closet, wear it again. So I'm talking about wearing something for 28 years straight. Between the elements, between the savagery of the infected when they attack someone, just between all of it, it made total sense that all the infected were naked. So I definitely appreciated that. The con for the nudity is the goddamn zombie penis that we had to deal with throughout the movie. And not necessarily the regular zombies, but one of the new classes of infected. Fucking penis right in the camera, like close-ups of giant dongs on the screen, which my friends, I'm not so uncomfortable I'm not so delicate with my manhood that I can't look at a impressive penis, not at all. But when you force me to look at it about a dozen times throughout the film, it gets a little excessive. I'm not going to knock the movie for it necessarily. I just thought it was a weird decision by Danny Boyle to just have this much zombie penis in the movie. But again, like I said, it makes sense that they're all naked. I just wish he maybe could choose a few different camera angles when shooting some of the zombies. That's all. So yeah, that's pretty much going to be my pros and cons for the movie. Overall, I enjoyed the movie. I really did. It's probably my second favorite in the franchise. It might actually become my favorite with more rewatches because, like I said, great performances, great kills. Slightly stepped down on the score, but beautiful cinematography, amazing performances, a great small cast, beautiful pacing for a 2-hour long zombie / infected movie. So yeah, overall, I recommend this one. I think it should be seen in theaters. I enjoyed it overall. It is not in my top 10 for this year, unfortunately. I had a few too many issues with it, which, I'll get more into detail with as we get into general thoughts. But yeah, overall, a really, really good movie that maybe falls just a little bit short of great, but I still highly recommend it. All genre, zombie fans, infected fans, this is definitely a must-see movie, especially in the theaters. Despite it being shot on iPhones, it looks gorgeous. So see it on the biggest screen that you can. And that'll do it for my general thoughts right now. Sorry, I got a little long-winded, folks.
No worries. Dawn, you're up next. What'd you think of 28 Years Later?
I'm not quite as high on it as Venom is, although I do agree. I do like aspects of it. For the series, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of either, although I do tend to prefer weeks over days. Days starts out strong. I love like the first 20-30 minutes, but it just kind of devolves in the second act. The pacing's just not there for me. And I'm kind of on board with Venom. I really could care less about humanity's the greater evil. Like, no, you've got flesh-eating zombies. That should be the greater evil. Focus on them. I do like the way Weeks kind of handles it. I think Weeks is a little bit stronger in that regard. But again, they're not like my go-to for the genre. They're not like top tens or anything like that. They're solid, they're respectable, but I do tend to gravitate to other stuff a little bit more readily and a little bit more a little bit more often, I should say. For years, I like some of the stuff here. I think the premise is okay. Um, maybe we skipped months, but I do like the way that this one kind of tackles what's going on here. I like the way that the virus has kind of expanded and it's kind of evolved over time. The way that it treats it treats the infected. It kind of brings everything. I don't want to say it's like a mixture between the two, where it's kind of like the dead for centuries meets the acrobatic gymnasts that are more commonly seen in like the like this kind of infected stuff. It kind of mm, not necessarily mixtures between the two, but it kind of plays a little bit more towards like the older shuffling stuff. When you have the ones that have been infected for quite a while that they just haven't had a chance to deal with. The attacks are great. I love the gore here. Not quite my kill of the year, but I'm definitely willing to put the Soto, quote unquote Mortal Kombat kill as an honorable mention, just for now, because we're still halfway through the year. Maybe we'll get something else, but in terms of a top three, I can see it making it. So definitely enjoyed that. As I joked about in my earlier mention, I do appreciate the equal opportunity for nudity's sake, but yeah, so much of it being forced upon you at that angle. Um, yeah, maybe start saying human tits and dicks from now on, just to just to balance everything out. Um, but overall, the one thing for me is that it feels so much like it's the first part of a trilogy, and as a standalone movie, I don't get the sense that I can go into this knowing that it's a straight movie and get any kind of resolution out of it. There's dangling plot holes, there's dangling plot threads, there's stuff brought up that's just completely not answered, stuff that I assume we'll get in parts 2 or 3. It kind of reminds me of the film that we tackled either last year or the year before, I think it was, and, it kinda reminds me of, like, Apocalypse Z, where it's something, like, again, post-apocalyptic zombie film, where it kind of reads like the first part of a series or a trilogy, but then you don't really get the sense that I should watch this without watching the others, as a group, even though they're not released yet. But there's so much to this in the story that it just kind of feels like they're setting up for later installments to get reveals. I don't want to say, just because I don't know if we're actually going to get that, and we're not in the spoiler section yet anyway, so it's not like I can really mention anything. But the whole thing reads like we're meant to take this upcoming trilogy as a whole and judge it at that point, not judging these as straightforward films. Like, if I was to just happen upon a zombie marathon and I was like, oh, maybe I should throw this one on, I don't get the sense that this is something that you can do as just like a one-off, where if you included it as say I picked up like just to pick a couple random zombie films here up on my shelf. If I was to like pick a marathon that says Burial Grounds or Return of the Living Dead, or oh, damn it, what's that stupid thing there? Oh, Rise of the Zombies. Stupid. Why the hell didn't I read that one? Um, but yeah, if I was to like pick a bunch of zombie movies like that and then throw this one on, I don't get the sense that this one would be as fulfilling, just because it leads to so many unanswered questions and so many you know, there's a lot of character motivations here that don't make sense. Maybe we're gonna get, you know, outcomes of those in later years, you know, down the line, but I just I can't get the sense that this is something to be taken as a standalone movie, and that kind of just really ruins a lot of the tension. It kind of just really makes, you know, I mean, I know Venom said he had no issues with the pacing. I kind of felt it, um, especially when we're getting all the exposition dumps in the, you know, like the middle of the film. I don't mind that, but at the same time, it just kind of highlights how we're, you know, at chapter one. And I can't say that I'm not as intrigued about, you know, waiting for chapters 2 and 3, but when it makes it so plainly obvious that we're in the middle, you know, or we're in a stage in the story that we are, it just doesn't feel satisfying waiting for these questions to be answered at a later time. And that kind of just really drains the interest, and that really kind of just drains the last act for me. And then yeah, the ending is just, yeah, that's just one of the biggest things that I have an issue with. That's one of the, well, I can't really say that, but yeah, the ending just it kind of just ends this on a, like a weak note, and it just really lowers it for me. So I can't say it's a bad film, but it's kind of one where I get the sense that I'm not supposed to enjoy this as is. I'm supposed to enjoy this with the rest of the franchise. And that just doesn't really make it feel like a one-off viewing is all that worthwhile. But uh, it's up to you if you're willing to take the chance. I mean, if you're interested in it, you know, I can think of far worse stuff that we've covered. But yeah, I'm not, it's not on my top 10 of the year. It's kind of floating around like the bottom of my honorable mentions, you know, probably be bumped off by the end of the year, but, um, didn't hate it, didn't love it. I do have more issues there are more things I liked about it, but I think the issues that I have against it are kind of just weighted a little bit more heavily. So, um, yeah, I don't know where I would rank these in terms of the franchise. I would probably say, kinda like Venom, maybe weeks first, then years, then days, but again, I kind of wanna just wait and just to see where we're going with the rest of this before I can really truly evaluate all 3 on their own, and I can't, you know, that's not, maybe that's not a bad thing, but for me, just, you know, I only got a chance to see this once. Maybe it'll change on a repeat viewing, but as it stands, the impression I get right now is I kind of need to see the other entries in the series to see where it goes before I make my final evaluation. And, you know, maybe it'll be good, or, you know, maybe it'll end up like the Halloween trilogy where it'll just, you know, eventually denigrate over time. But that's questions for the later for future fresh cuts group to answer. So for now, I'll say back to you, Mike.
Okay. Yeah, that is something like when a movie is announced ahead of time that it's going to be part of a trilogy, then it automatically is like, okay, do you have to wait for the other parts in how you judge it? Because sometimes they tend to do that, which is unfortunate because when movies come out that aren't initially even supposed to have sequels or there's nothing planned ahead of time, you tend to more get like a beginning, middle, and end. This one, it's a little more open ended, but out of all the criticism, I think that's probably the one I most agree with is this really feels like part of a trilogy because if you look at the story itself, it really feels like they're pushing a setup for something to come later. There's a lot of like almost coming of age factors with it. And yes, I feel like the what we got in the end, you could have done something similar, but less of a tonal change, less almost like of a goofy tone, if you want to go that far. Um, because there's something that happens, or there's something kind of like in view of what's going on that is a definite callback to something our protagonists run into earlier in the movie. I don't know if everyone caught it, and by everyone I don't mean my co-host here. I just mean like in the general viewing public. There's something to suggest that they might have been responsible for something, but we can talk about that in spoilers. But yeah, for overall thoughts, yeah, I did enjoy this one. I liked most of it. I actually agree with like most of what Venom said. I For some reason when when I came out of the theater, I thought Venom was gonna dislike it more than he did. So I was like, oh man, I'm gonna have to go to battle for this one. So the fact that he pretty much was matching most of my thoughts, I was like, okay, well, uh, that'll make a shorter general thoughts for me. I do agree that the score seemed to take like a back seat compared to the other two movies. The other
Mhm.
ones, it just felt more pronounced. It felt like the cues in the other movies, it was more aggressive with music, but maybe, I mean, it's just because this one's a little more desolate in like the setting and the story, and it makes sense because like something I've heard from a lot of people out there is like it's so different from the other two, and it's like, well, it should be because the first one was kind of like how it started. The second one was like the half-ass attempt to like restore things before the entire like world fell. But this one's like almost 30 years beyond that when like from what we gather in just this movie in this kind of contained story is the attempts to like go back to normal failed miserably. So like the world should look different. You shouldn't have like the same like basic story of like, oh, we're trying to restore order outside of the context of this movie where it's like a small community on an isolated island. So I kind of like that it was very different in setup. It was almost the difference is this world felt resigned to defeat. Like, yes, we're going to salvage what we can, restart what we can, back to like the basics, but we understand that like that virus still pretty much runs the greater world, and we're just trying to avoid it as best we can. So I like that setting. Yeah, there's a couple stupid actions by like the child character in this, but but I kind of understand it because the way I justified it in my head was like, okay, if you look at the world right now, right? We're raising kids now to where if there's a spider in their room, they're scared to death and need the parent to come like kill it, right? Not every kid, but like a general observation. Where in this world, these kids were born into like the rage virus world where they're being raised to be like warriors, and the fact that they're going to have to go out and forage and defend from rage virus zombies. So like it makes sense why they would be a little more brave and bold in their actions and doing some of the things that one of our protagonists does here. Where like I would never expect one of my kids to like do that because it just wouldn't make sense. But different world, different ways, different. He probably even being considered like an adult because I think he's 12, right? Or the character, I mean, is 12. Um,
Mhm.
but if we go back like 200, 300 years, that was probably like the norm around that age where like you were expected to be contributing in that way, whereas now, no, not at all. So yeah, I was fine justifying that. I like the action in it. I liked the obviously the fatality that you're referring to. I like that we got to see a couple of those in action. Um, we definitely get Alpha Dong and a lot of it, a lot more than I
Jesus.
was expecting too. Because it felt like at first the shots were almost like done in like a wide angle, kind of like it's there, but like there's enough else on the screen that it's not to your full attention. And then it's like, oh no, we are going to see this Alpha Dong swinging away. Um, I like that, they still uh, give off the impression that like there's still like different groups of survivors, and your interactions with like people who could be considered heroes or villains could be like 10 minutes. You could be saved by someone 1 minute and then totally turn against them the next. That's just the nature of this world. Or like the way the story sets up, like, oh, okay, these people are going to form a bond and it's going to be they're grouping up from here on out, and then 10 minutes later, nope, they're out of the picture because of something that happens. I like that there's still that frantic nature of this world. It still feels very unpredictable. um I like the character that they run into on the mainland that they're seeking out. I thought that was
Mhm.
interesting. His whole thing going on. Um, and I'll leave that. I won't get into the details of that, but that was interesting to me. And what else can I say that hasn't already been said? Probably not much, but I did find kind of like the evolution of the virus because 28 years, it is some chunk of time, but because I didn't rewatch the first two going into this, but my memory of 28 days later was like kind of like the general idea by those military survivors where like they were kind of trying to do their own tests, and their assumption was like because the rage virus kind of takes over all your facilities, you have no survival instincts anymore, so they're likely going to just starve to death after however many days you need, but from some kind of nutrition. But obviously in this movie we see like why that's not so much the case anymore. And I think you could make the argument that like I don't know if 28 years is enough for that kind of like mutation in a virus, but I'm not gonna nitpick because I still think it's interesting. I like kind of where they went. I mean, I like it despite like maybe medically speaking, it's not accurate, but I don't care. It was still cool to see. And you could also say that hey, in the first one it was so new that they just didn't know. Like they're just going with what they knew in real time, and none of them are alive enough to spoiler for 28 days later, none of them were alive enough to really do long-term tests of their own anyway. So that's cool. But yeah, I am interested because the next one has already been filmed and is releasing early 2026, but I don't think they've touched the third one yet. So I think going back to the way the movie ended, they really put it out there kind of where I think you could have done that same ending just a little more subtle. And I can't even really get into like how I might have suggested doing it without spoiling it. So I'll just leave it at that. That like I think Venom said it pretty much how I would have already, where it just happens and you're like, holy shit, what's this? And then credits roll. Um yeah, and there was another subtle way to do it, maybe. That probably
Oh,
would have
there's
got the
multiple
same.
subtle ways.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm trying to say is like you could have kind of introduced an element of what we saw without, and then that actual scene that happened, you could have put that in the second movie as like the proper introduction to what's happening. And we
Mhm.
can get into more of that once we get into the walkthrough. But yeah, overall, I still really liked it. It seems like from what I've seen, like critics seem to really like it, and audiences are split. Um, but I'm on the side of I thought it was pretty good. Pretty good with some things to criticize, but overall I still enjoyed it, and I want to see where it goes from here. I want to see like what the second and ultimately third movie do to like change every, because sometimes that can improve your thoughts on the first entry or go the opposite direction. So I am looking forward to the next one, and I'll leave it at that. Back to you, Venom.
One other thing that the movie does that I don't like that I forgot to talk about in my general thoughts. My general thoughts were long enough, so no need for me to drag it out. But throughout the first act of this movie, Danny Boyle intercut shots from like military B-roll, like stock footage, military stock footage, medieval knight movies, like knights and swords and all that shit. And it bothered me because it was there to imply what was happening. But I feel like Danny Boyle didn't have enough faith in his audience to know what is happening without having to intercut those shots in there, which I thought were completely unnecessary. Like, I didn't think it added anything to the film other than an explanation on a silver platter, which, I mean, in 2025, horror movie audiences are a lot savvier than maybe Danny Boyle gives us credit for. So, I mean, what did you guys think about those intercut, like black and white and stock footage scenes? Like, did you find any value to them at all?
I figured they would have been something that was explained over time, but eventually, after a while, I kind of forgot about it.
Yeah, they only do it in the first act, so it's only while they're training. It's only while they're showing like them training the kids and everything. So it's like it just felt really heavy-handed, like it was unnecessary. I don't know, Mike. Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I agree. It wasn't really necessary. Like when the fact that they were doing it, I thought there was going to be more to it. Like we would get more reference points or context. But ultimately, I was just like, okay, I don't really think it was needed. Like what it led or didn't lead to, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. So what are you gonna do? All right. Well, I mean, anything else that we talk about is going to delve into spoiler territory. So I think it's a good time to just go ahead and get into our spoiler filled section. So again, folks, this is your final spoiler warning. If you have not seen 28 Years Later and actually are interested in it, go ahead and pause the podcast, go check out the movie and come on back to find out our detailed thoughts on the movie. If you have already seen it or don't care to see it, then stick around and find out what we thought. So let's get into it. Our movie actually opens in 2002 when the outbreak first began. What we see is the movie opens up with a bunch of kids watching the Teletubbies on a television. We can hear that there's commotion in other parts of the house that the kids are in, not in the room that they're in. And then eventually an adult comes in, opens the door and puts another kid in the room. So we're probably talking like 8 or 9 kids in this room, all watching Teletubbies. But then if you look carefully, you could see the distressed look on these kids' faces. Like there's something going on outside of that room. And eventually, there's screaming, there's, glass breaking, and then suddenly silence. There's no noise whatsoever. All the kids are still being quiet, watching Teletubbies in the room. And then one of the kids, the kid that actually lives in the house, gets up and he goes up to the door and calls out for his father. Obviously, the noise is enough to get the attention of whatever's outside that door. Suddenly, we hear something smashing at the door, trying to open it, and eventually the door does open, exposing our familiar infected characters. And they go into this room and they completely kill almost every kid in this room. Some of the reviews that I read about this film, some of the reviewers are saying that Danny Boyle went hard in this cold open. I'm going to say he didn't go hard enough because all of the kid kills are off screen. And again, it is a guilty pleasure thing of mine when I see a director that actually has the balls to kill a child on screen. It just, I mean, hell, we just saw a kid get squished by a piano in Final Destination Bloodlines recently. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, everything is done off screen. Eventually, Jimmy is able to get out of the house. We see that what few adults have not been infected yet are being attacked. Eventually, Jimmy's mother gets attacked from behind, and she yells at him while she still has her faculties. Run, Jimmy, get out of here, run. Jimmy eventually, after seeing his mother get attacked, eventually does run out of the house, and he goes to a church that's adjacent to the house. It's like right across the road from the house that they're in. Jimmy runs into the church yelling for his dad, and it turns out his dad is the pastor of this church. We see him in front of the altar praying to the statue of Jesus, and Jimmy kind of runs up to his dad screaming, saying, "What's happening, Dad? What's happening?" And the dad is so religious that he's almost happy that this is happening. He's like, "Oh, son, it's the judgment day." And then when Jimmy tells his father that his mother died, the pastor, goes to Jimmy, "No, she didn't die. She's been saved, my son. We're all going to be saved from this whole thing." At that exact moment, all the zombies break through the stained glass windows of the church, and Jimmy is able to find a hiding spot in a little cubby hole underneath the altar of the church. But then we see his father get attacked by the zombies. And what's funny is that I think Jimmy's father thought that he was going to get killed and be able to go to heaven, but nope, he gets converted. He ends up becoming infected and almost instantly like becomes the leader of that group. Like literally after they convert him and he changes, he gets up and he starts leading the group outside of the church. Like he instantly became their leader. It's kind of interesting. And then of course Jimmy survives, and that's the end of our cold open. So like I said, a definite step down from the cold open of 28 weeks later, which I still think is the best cold open of this franchise. Absolutely love it. This one, like I said, a little bit more tame, but still pretty cool. So after our opening credits, we have a time jump of, you guessed it, 28 years later. We are now off the coast of Scotland, off the Scotland Highlands, and we see that there's a little island off the mainland, off the actual mainland of Scotland, which is part of the UK. Don't forget, folks, Scotland and England are both part of the UK. So when they say the UK has been quarantined, they do mean Scotland and England. So the island is basically, inhabited by a bunch of people who have created a community here. They've built walls around the island. The only way to get to the island, obviously, besides a boat of some kind, is a strip of land that they call the causeway. And basically, that strip of land connecting the island to the mainland is only available at low tide. So when the ocean is at low tide, the causeway is exposed and you can just walk across. It's not very long. It's like maybe, I don't know, a quarter mile, half mile at most, I would say. But during high tide, the currents are so strong that you couldn't possibly swim that distance in that part of the water. So basically, the only way you can get to and from this island, which I believe was called the Holy Island, if I remember correctly from some of the signs I saw there. So we're introduced to Spike. Spike is a 12-year-old kid, obviously born and raised on this island. And we are also introduced to his father, Jamie, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson. We are introduced to his mother, Isla, something. It's got a European pronunciation. I actually don't remember exactly what it was, but let's just say Isla. That's Spike's mother and Jamie's wife. She apparently is sick, not with the infection, not with the rage virus, but there's something else. She's complaining of sweats, pounding headache, confusion, like she'll get disoriented many times throughout the day and throughout this film. We see her get disoriented constantly. But unfortunately, Spike, there's no doctor on this island. So they don't have anyone to diagnose this woman. All they know is she doesn't have the rage virus, so they let her stay on the island. When we join our cast, it is the day of Spike's first day off the island. So basically what this island does is they have a coming of age ritual where usually at the age of 14 or 15, fathers will take their sons to the mainland for the kids to get their first kill, to kind of get a feel of what the rest of the world looks like, because obviously the island that they're living on for the most part looks fairly unaffected. They've been able to keep the infected off the island, obviously, because once the high tide comes up, anything on that causeway is just going to get washed away. And since they turned the island into a fortress, obviously the infected can't easily get in. So the whole town is happy for Spike. It's like a big event when a new kid goes out for the first time. Now, unfortunately, Spike is 12 years old, but his father convinces the leadership council of the island that he's ready. The council doesn't want him to go. They're like, he's just a little too young, but his father kind of vouches for him and says, "Nah, he'll be fine. I'll be with him." Blah blah blah. And they kind of relent. They let him go, and we see father and son out on the mainland for the first time in the film. We don't see any infected right away. They're just kind of walking around. They find a house. They search through the house to see if they could find some supplies. Obviously, there's, the house has already been ransacked multiple times, so there's nothing left in there other than a frisbee. I think Jamie, the dad, finds a frisbee and remembers how fun frisbees were, so he takes it. Spike has no idea what a frisbee is. It's funny because they use that a lot for comedy in the movie. Spike's kind of ignorance to everyday things, because of course Spike has lived his whole life in this apocalypse. He doesn't know what a cell phone is. He doesn't know what online means. So there's multiple jokes throughout the movie, kind of playing on his zombie apocalypse ignorance, if you will, or zombie apocalypse influenced ignorance, since he doesn't need to know what a cell phone is. Blah blah blah. All right, while they're out, they finally run into their first infected, and this is one of the new types of infected. Like I said, there are 2 new types that are introduced in this movie, as the virus has now had 28 years to mutate and maybe, change how it affects the infected. So the first one is called slow-mos. They call them slow-mos. And what these guys are is they're big fat infected people that basically do nothing but eat. Like, they don't seem like they're real interested in attacking. They basically crawl on all fours because they're so fat. Like I said, they're all bloated. Like, if this were a video game, they would have been called bloaters, because that's usually what we call these type of zombies in a video game, is bloaters. So yeah, they're obviously very slow moving. They can walk on their legs. They can get up and run if they need to, but for the most part, they crawl so that they can eat. They eat worms, insects, anything that moves on the ground, they will consume. So like I said, Jamie and Spike see the first slow-mo on the ground. He's preoccupied with eating a bunch of worms that he's pulling out of the ground. And this is when he tells Spike, okay, there's multiple ways to kill one of these infected. Obviously, bows and arrows are going to be the main weapon of choice here, as firearms are long gone after this time. At this point, military outside of the UK are the only ones that actually have weapons anywhere in this area. So obviously, with their bows and arrows, Jamie tells Spike, okay, you need to hit him either in the head, in the neck, or in the heart. Those are basically the 3 places where if you nail them with an arrow, they will go down. So I don't know why the neck works, but it does, because hell, you could shoot a human in the neck with an arrow. They may not go down depending on how much damage you do. But yeah, for whatever reason, as soon as these slow-mos get hit in the neck with an arrow, they just bleed out and die. Now, Spike does successfully kill the slow-mo that he's aiming at, but little does he and his father know there's another slow-mo crawling behind them very quietly. It's not making any noise. It's crawling very quietly. Once that slow-mo sees the first slow-mo get hit with the arrow and die, that's when it decides to get up and attack Jamie and Spike. Obviously, Jamie being older and good with weapons, he's able to dispatch that infected, the slow-mo, with no issues. Another one comes out of the woodwork screaming, and this one is running at Jamie. Again, Jamie is able to take this one out. And then there's a weird thing where Jamie sees a child slow-mo. It looks, I'm not sure if the child is Asian or it just looks Asian because its face is so bloated. His eyes are basically swollen shut. So it vaguely looks Asian. No offense to my Asian listeners. And it's, like I said, it's a girl. It looks like it's maybe a preteen girl who is also fat, has the same build as the rest of the slow-mos. But Jamie, for some reason, doesn't kill it. Basically, lines up the arrow, but then just says, nah, and they decide to run away. Now, as they're running through, or not running, because at this point they've killed all the slow-mos that are in the area, the child one that Jamie let get away basically leaves, doesn't attack them, which is weird, because don't forget, this is the rage virus. These things are supposed to be attacking anything that they see alive. But these slow-mos apparently, maybe their mental capacities are a little bit, maybe they're slow mentally as well as physically, hence the name. So who knows? So on the way back to the island, Spike and Jamie are on their way back. Don't forget, they have to get back before the high tide comes in, or they'll be stuck on the mainland for 12 more hours until the low tide comes back. Unfortunately, on their way back to the causeway, they run into the other new type of infected, and these guys are called alphas. Yes, you heard Mike in our general thoughts talk about the alphas. Yes, these are the juggernauts of the infected. They are gigantic, both in stature and in penis size, because their dicks are just gigantic. I mean, impressive, golf clap, definitely. So they are smart, like they don't just indiscriminately attack, like they actually can plan, and they are considered almost like the generals of the infected world because they can give orders. During this scene, what we see an alpha standing way in the distance, with the sun behind them. This is one of the shots that I was talking about earlier in general thoughts. The alpha is standing there next to a tree, just kind of staring at Jamie and Spike. And then suddenly some of the regular zombies show up, not the slow-mos, but the runners that we're all, that we all know and love throughout this franchise. They don't attack right away. They all just kind of come out of the woodwork and just stand there. Finally, Jamie and Spike are like, all right, screw this. Let's get back into the woods. We'll be safer there than out here. Because at this point, they're in a field, like a field of just tall grass. So they're basically exposed. As soon as Jamie and Spike start to run away, you hear the alpha scream at the top of his lungs, and suddenly all the rest of the zombies just start chasing. And one thing I really liked, another thing about the whole 28 years passing, is that a lot of the zombies in this one aren't as coordinated. If you remember in 28 Days and Weeks, the zombies were practically gymnasts. Like they could jump over things, they could run, they could traverse long gaps, blah, blah, blah. These guys, because they've been around so long, obviously their brains have deteriorated, their muscles have deteriorated slightly. So they still run fast, but it's almost like a physically challenged run for some of them. Some of them look like they have a limp. Some of them, like their arms, like they almost look like they have no control of their arms. So they're just like swinging all over the place. So again, the passage of time done really well in this one. I'll give Boyle and Garland credit for that. I really like that part of it. Eventually, while being chased by the runners, let's call them, Jamie and Spike periodically will stop running, turn around, and shoot a couple of them. Unfortunately, at this point, Spike is just terrified, and every arrow that he shoots misses badly. Like they don't even come close to hitting any of the infected. Basically, Jamie saves the day since he's skilled with the bow and arrow. He's killing all the infected as they come. They eventually find a house, like an abandoned house on the mainland. They go in there. They kill a few more infected as they run in. And then they go up to the attic because the attic has that, there's no stairway or ladder or anything going up there. They climb up to the attic and they're safe for a little while. And then this is when we get specifically the shot that I'm talking about. At this point, Jamie and Spike look outside the window of the attic that they're in, and they see the alpha way in the distance, just standing there staring at them, just waiting. Like, I really like these infected. They're pretty cool. Unfortunately, the house that they're in is so dilapidated and old that when a herd of deer or whatever goes by, the chimney collapses. The chimney of the house collapses. And of course, with Spike and Jamie in the attic, it basically exposes them to any infected that might be around. Luckily, when they get out of the house that is now partially collapsed, there's no infected outside. Probably the noise of the herd of, deer or buck or whatever it was, is kind of disguising them, kind of like in A Quiet Place when they go to the waterfall to talk. The noise of the waterfall is hiding their speech. So with this one, the noise of the herd is, masking the noise of the house collapsing. So at this point, Spike and Jamie, or Jamie, I should say, decides, okay, we got to get the fuck out of here. The house is collapsed. We have no way of protecting ourselves, but we have the advantage of it being dark, and we're out of here. At this point in the movie is where we start seeing this really weird, like red lighting scenes. My best guess is that this is the POV of the infected themselves. They basically can see in night vision, but you know how generally night vision either looks gray or has like a greenish tint, usually, like when we're watching like, you know, ghost videos and shit like that. But this one is red. It's solidly red, which kind of makes sense because there's blood in the eyes of all the infected. So it's like they see in infrared night vision, but everything is in red, which I've seen people kind of not like it, talk about how much they didn't like it. I kind of dug it. I mean, they don't abuse it. It's not like it's in the movie constantly, just every now and again. And it also kind of shows the progression of these infected too, because if you remember in 28 weeks later, at the beginning of the movie, the infection had almost been eradicated from the UK because the infected starved. They basically just starved to death. But in this movie, it seems like the infected have learned that they don't have to just eat people. They can eat animals, they can eat fish, they can eat insects, and that's exactly what we see. In one of these red night vision scenes, we see a bunch of infected taking down a deer and just decimating it, just eating all sorts of it. And then in that same scene, we see an alpha go up to the deer, and this is the first time we see the Mortal Kombat fatality. And I've been purposely ambiguous about this one. So for those of you who are fans of Mortal Kombat, it is Sub-Zero's spine rip. If you remember in the first Mortal Kombat, one of Sub-Zero's fatalities was he would grab you by the neck, pull your head off your shoulders, and your spine would still be connected to your head. And then he would hold it up in front of the camera with his hands straight out. What's fucking hysterical is that the alpha does the exact same thing. He does Sub-Zero's fatality to this deer, and then he holds the head up like it's a trophy. Like there's nobody around other than other infected people, but yeah, he's holding the head up like it's a trophy, and then he ends up propping it on a tree. That's the signal that Jamie, the dad, knows that there's an alpha around, because the regular infected aren't smart enough to do that. This is obviously a warning. The alpha is basically putting this head up on a high tree to warn others that, hey, there's an alpha around here, so get the fuck out of here. As soon as Jamie sees the head up in the tree, he realizes, shit, there's an alpha. We got to get the fuck out of here, which kind of leads to more chasing and blah, 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 blah. Okay, so eventually they get back to the causeway, and the tide has already started to come in. It's not quite high tide yet. The water is at about ankle or shin deep, maybe. So they decide to run for it. They don't know that they're being chased, but at the same time that they're running towards the causeway, the alpha is chasing them. Once they get to the causeway, they think that they're safe, so they stop running and they're just walking. Like I said, they're walking in like shin to knee high water, nothing too deep. But then suddenly they hear a scream, they turn around and they see the alpha chasing them up the causeway. And he is running fast as fuck. Like I said, these alphas are tall. They're like 6'8" or taller. They got long, strong legs. So these things can move, my friends. We see Spike and
it's kind of like Jason
Jamie.
Momoa with rage virus.
Yeah, actually, that's perfect. I'll go with that. Aquaman with rage. I love it. So we obviously get a tense moment where the alpha is catching up to them. Spike, of course, as you know, any good blonde girl in a horror movie, falls down, can't get up right away. Jamie has to like pick him up and scoop him off the ground. Eventually, they get to the gate of their community, but the alpha is right on their tail. We see people in the tower on the other side of the gate of the community shooting arrows at the alpha. They have no effect. At one point, the alpha falls down because he's hit with 3 arrows, but then he gets up right away. Like he's more annoyed than anything else. He continues running, chasing Jamie and Spike. Eventually, Jamie and Spike get to the gate, but of course, they're not going to open the gate with an alpha running towards them. Eventually, they end up lighting a flaming arrow from one of the big, I don't know what they call a catapult, mate? Not a catapult. one of those just big stationary crossbow things. They light up one of the big ass arrows and they hit the Alpha just as he's about to attack Spike and Jamie. Spike and Jamie start yelling for the people inside to open the gate, but of course they have to make sure that no one is infected, that Jamie or Spike haven't been bitten or whatever. Now, obviously, we all know that the rage virus is fairly instant. You get bit, within a couple of seconds, your eyes are bleeding, you're puking blood, and you're infected, and that's it. So why the people on the other side of the gate decided to wait that long to verify that Jamie and Spike were not infected is beyond me, but whatever. You got to be careful. You got to take precautions. So there it is. Now, when Jamie and Spike get back to the community has a party for them because, like I said, it's Spike's first time out. And rather than Jamie telling the truth about everything that happened while they were out there, he kind of embellishes the story. Obviously, he's a proud dad. He wants to make his son look good. So he starts talking about how the son was killing infected with the wind blowing and tall grass with the infected, running. Obviously, all exaggerations. Spike only killed the one slow-mo that was on the ground, not paying attention. But obviously, Dad kind of built him up. Now, during the party, Spike notices his dad leave the party with another woman from the community. Don't forget, Mom is sick. She's bedridden. She can't really do too much. And here's Dad now cheating on Mom. Unfortunately, Spike follows him to a cave and witnesses his dad, give oral to this, fairly attractive woman there in the community. Obviously, it upsets Spike. He ends up leaving, going back home. He relieves, or he tries to relieve the person who's watching his mom, because like I said, Mom is bedridden, so she can't go to the party, but they don't want to leave her alone in the house either because she's so sick. So they always want to leave someone in there with her. One of the elders is basically the one that's at the house. Spike tells them, I'm done with the party. You can go join the party if you want. I'll stay here with Mom. And then eventually they get into a conversation about what happened while Spike was out on his first adventure. He lets him know that, that his dad has been exaggerating the stories, that he really only killed one slow-mo that wasn't paying attention, and that he couldn't hit anything else because his hands were shaking. He couldn't shoot the arrows straight, blah, blah, blah. The guy, the elder kind of assures them that, hey, you did the best you could. The fact that you came back alive is a triumph in and of itself. The fact that you actually did officially get your first kill, again, is a triumph. And then he starts talking about some of the stuff he saw, the wide open spaces. And then he mentions a fire. Apparently, while Jamie and Spike were out on their adventure, they saw a fire in the distance, like a bonfire, which, normally would imply that either there's a wildfire going on or there's people there. Spike asks his father who is at the fire, and the dad just kind of lies to him and says, oh, I don't know. It's probably just some crazy people, nothing to be concerned about. During this conversation that Spike has with the elder, they find out that it's not just a human survivor that's been surviving all these years out on the mainland. It's actually a doctor. An actual legitimate doctor. Spike instantly gets mad at his father. Like, you knew that there was a doctor out there alive in the mainland and you're just going to let my mother die in her bed? Obviously, the logistics of going onto the mainland to go see someone who may or may not help. See, this is the thing that Spike doesn't understand, that most of us do, is that, of course, people can be just as bad as the flesh eaters in this kind of apocalypse world. Spike doesn't seem to think, he's not thinking clearly. He's a 12-year-old who's only gone out once. So what does he decide to fucking do? He smuggles his mother who's very incapacitated, mind you. Like, she spends most of her time in bed, and a lot of times throughout the day, like I mentioned earlier, she has mental lapses where she doesn't know who she's talking to. She'll call Spike dad because she thinks she's speaking to her father and not her son, blah, blah, blah. So what ends up happening is Spike fakes. And this is what really fucking pisses me off. Spike set the supply tent on fire. Not some random, shed or hut or something that could be lost. Literally the fucking supply shed where these people get their supplies before they go out on their runs in the mainland. And this little dipshit sets it on fire. Lord knows how many resources they lost because of this little idiot. So after he starts the fire, he goes to the gate, to the watchmen, the guys that are in the tower, and he tells them there's a fire at the resource tent, and all men have been called to help stop the fire. One of the guys in the tower doesn't want to leave because it's his job to stay in the tower and make sure that infected don't run up the causeway to get to the community. Spike says, I'll do it. I'll go up to the tower and watch while you guys go and take care of the fire. Eventually, the watchtower guy relents, goes and runs to the fire. And then we see Spike basically go pull his mother out of a bush that he had her hiding in and opens up the gate, which, by the way, can't be closed from the outside. So this little dipshit not only started a fire in the resource hut or shed or whatever you want to call it, he left the fucking front gate open during low tide. Like, I'm sorry, but this is unforgivable in my opinion. I don't give a fuck that you're 12 years old. You endangered every single person in that community, and that's fucking annoying. I understand you love your mother, but are you willing to sacrifice your entire fucking community in the hopes that you can save your mother? Because that's the thing. We still don't know what she has, what her affliction is, So he's literally just taking all these chances just to get a diagnosis on what his mother has. So like I said, it's somewhat admirable because he wants to save his mother, but it's also incredibly fucking stupid. But despite all of his bad decisions, believe it or not, it actually ends up kind of working out for him. But, I'll get to that in a little bit. So once they're on the mainland, it's just Spike and his mother. It is a 12-year-old and an incapacitated adult in a fucking zombie apocalypse. How they survived more than 10 minutes is beyond me, but they did. So, like I said, Spike tells his mother that we're going to see a doctor, and off they go. It's a 2-day trip on foot. So at the end of the first night, they decide to stay in an abandoned church. There's like a church with a steeple. Unfortunately, the front door is broken off, so there's no way to actually protect your perimeter, but they're hoping that it'll be a quiet night. So they go in, they fall. Basically, Spike tells his mother to get some sleep. He'll stay up and do the watch. Of course, as expected, since Spike is only a 12-year-old, of course, he ends up falling asleep while he's supposed to be on watch. And then we see one of the slow-mos start crawling towards him. Now, the slow-mo obviously doesn't notice them because they're both sleeping, and luckily neither of them snore. that would be the end of them completely, but luckily neither one of them snore. They're quiet sleepers, so the slow-mo doesn't notice them. He's crawling up to him. Eventually he grabs Spike's shoelace thinking that it's a worm and goes to eat it, realizes that it's not a worm, that it's fabric, so he spits it out. But then he looks up and realizes that the shoelace is attached to a juicy human being that's asleep. So he starts to crawl up to Spike. Literally, he's face to face with Spike. He opens his mouth. He's about to bite down on Spike. And all we see is a blue tarp, like a blue plastic tarp wrapped around the zombie's head. And then Spike wakes up suddenly. So at first, we think it was maybe a dream. But then as soon as Spike and his mother wake up, they look to their left and see the dead zombie, the dead slow-mo. So somebody killed that slow-mo while Spike was asleep. And we get the answer right away. As it turns out, Spike's mother, she has these mental lapses that I talked about. Well, some of these mental lapses of hers must make her into Rambo, because just like I said, just as the slow-mo is about to bite Spike, she wraps its head in a blue tarp and then fucking slams it into the edge of a concrete like slab, crushing its skull. Guys, mom is like 120 pounds soaking wet, but she turns into a goddamn superhero when her son's in danger. So again, I kind of like that element. Even though mom isn't always there, when she is there, she's on point, and I like that. So after that, Spike and mom end up leaving. They end up getting into a situation where we end up seeing that infected. For anybody who's seen the trailer, you guys know that there's an infected in the trailer that looks just like Cillian Murphy. Now, we've gotten confirmation from Danny Boyle that is not Cillian Murphy. The infected looks like him, almost exactly like him, but it's not him. So, potentially maybe we'll still see Cillian Murphy in this franchise. Who knows? Anyway, let's see. Spike ends up killing the infected, but then obviously when the infected gets hit with an arrow, it lets out a scream, which alerts more infected. Suddenly there's 3 or 4 infected chasing Spike and his mother. So they basically start to run. They see a gas station in the distance and decide, okay, let's go in there and hide. They're still actively being chased. Like there's an infected right behind them. They end up getting inside of this service station that has like a restaurant connected to it. And as it turns out, there's a gas leak. There's a gas leak that's been leaking for fucking years, probably. When they open the door, literally the entire inside of the place has visible fumes, not smoke, but fumes, like gas fumes. And as soon as mom walks into the station, she's like, I can't breathe. And she tries to go right back out the door as she came in, even though there's infected outside. Spike stops her. They end up hiding for a little bit, but then eventually more infected show up. Again, Spike is admirable. He grabs a fire extinguisher and kills like 2 or 3 infected before they get to him and his mom. And then out of nowhere, a military guy shows up. I actually skipped a scene where there were 6, Swedish military naval officers who were on patrol on the shore of the UK, of the mainland, but their ship sank. Not that we see this. We're relayed this story by the surviving soldier. Their ship sinks, so they end up coming to the mainland. 8 of them survive to the mainland, but at this point, all that's left is this one soldier. His name is Eric. Like I said, he's Swedish. And, he's not real happy. Like, after saving Spike and his mom, he's not real happy with the fact that they don't have any answers for him. Like, he's pissed off that he saved them. He's mad that he wasted his bullets. I think he actually says it in so many words that I could have saved my bullets. Why did I even bother saving you? You can't do anything for me. Now, Spike basically says, we're on our way to go see a doctor, and to hopefully he can help with my mother, help, with whatever ailment it is that she has. Obviously, the soldier has no interest in doing that, but at the same time, the soldier also has no interest in being alone on the mainland with one weapon, knowing that he's going to get killed as soon as he runs into more than like 2 or 3 infected. So he relents. He ends up staying with Spike and his mom. They eventually get to a abandoned train. Now, in this train, we hear some screaming. We hear some very familiar screaming. It sounds like there's an infected in there. Mom, though, doesn't recognize it as an infected screaming. She must not have a lot of experience off the island like all the men do. So she actually goes into the train to follow the noise. As it turns out, we have a pregnant infected. Did she become pregnant after she was infected? Was she pregnant before the infection and the baby just kept growing? We don't really get a lot of answers about that. We just have to accept that there's a pregnant infected woman. She's not completely naked, so you could tell that she hasn't been infected for like 20 plus years, because she still has some shreds of clothing on her, but she's obviously exposed. But so the mom, like I said, realizes that this woman is in labor. Yes, pregnant infected in labor. So the infected doesn't attack mom. The infected woman is so concerned with her own pain and discomfort that she doesn't attack mom. Eventually, mom holds her hands up, almost like jazz hands. She holds up her hands in front of the infected, and the infected then grabs her hands and uses them as balance. Like they have an understanding. I don't know if this is like a mother thing, like, they're both mothers, so they both kind of understand what's happening. Despite, one of them being infected, she still kind of has an idea of what's happening. So eventually, the infected woman starts to push the baby out. Once the head is exposed, mom, Isla, goes ahead and pulls the baby out the rest of the way. She asks Spike to cut the umbilical cord, which he does, and then she asks him for his bottle of water, which he gives her. She kind of washes the baby down so that, you know, all the placenta and blood and whatever else is off of the child. And then we see that the child is uninfected. Yeah, it is not a zombie baby or an infected baby the way the soldier thought it was. By the way, the soldier's name is Eric. I don't know if I mentioned that or not, but that is Eric. After the infected gives birth to the baby, she kind of goes back to her normal mentality of being a rage monster and literally gets up and attacks the mom. Luckily, Eric is there with his machine gun and he kills the infected before she can, touch mom. And then Eric, the soldier, tells mom, put the baby down. Obviously with the intention of killing the baby. He's going to shoot the baby. But Spike and mom are both saying, look, it's not infected. Look at it. It's crying. Its eyes aren't red. It is not infected. Eric doesn't care. Eric is convinced it's a zombie baby. He even calls it such. And he's literally like, I'm giving you 5 seconds. You either put the baby down or I'm going to kill all 3 of you. I don't care. As Eric is counting down his 5 countdown, he's stepping backwards, almost like he's trying to get out of the situation. And out of nowhere, a big hand reaches out and grabs Eric from inside the train, pulls him out. We hear that very familiar sound of a head and spine being pulled out of the body, which we've already heard once or twice in the film at this point. And then jumps back into the train while still holding Eric's head, his head and spine in his hand, almost like a trophy. Like I said, these alphas are badass. Well, by the way, this alpha is even bigger than the first alpha that got killed at the gate of the community. This guy is monstrous. He looks like a Aborigine type guy, just big, monstrous with a big monstrous penis. This thing was gigantic. Again, kudos to the actor if that was his actual penis. But anyway, he starts to give chase. Spike and his mom start running out of the train. They start running through the train cars. The infected, or the alpha, is smart enough that he's not even trying to smash through the doors. He's literally opening the train doors, the doors in between the train cars. He's just opening them. Like I said, these guys are fucking smart. I'll give them credit. Eventually, Spike and mom get out of the train. They start running towards an open field, and then here comes the alpha. The alpha jumps out of the train, still holding Eric's severed head in his hand, and starts to give chase. Now, once again, very similar to the scene where the alpha was chasing Jamie and Spike at the gate of the community. Once again, it looks like this alpha is about to kill Spike and his mother, but then suddenly we see somebody shoot or blow a blow dart at the infected, at the alpha, and he stops in his tracks. He doesn't fall down. He just kind of stops there. And then the person with the blow dart exposes himself, and it's Ray Fiennes, my friend. Fucking loved it. Again, you guys know I don't watch trailers, so I had no fucking idea Ray Fiennes was in here. He is literally one of my favorite actors. So it was a pleasant surprise to see him. He's completely covered. It looks like he's painted himself red, but what it is he covers himself with iodine every day. Apparently, the rage virus hates iodine. So he doesn't worry about getting it airborne or, with saliva or anything like that, because he's covered head to toe with iodine. He's literally painted red. It's actually kind of a cool effect. Looks kind of like a witch doctor or something. Pretty cool. And then it turns out he is our doctor. He is Dr. Kelson. He's the person that Spike and his mother have been searching for. It turns out that the alpha has a name. Dr. Kelson named the alpha Samson. He said that this is the alpha that's been living in this area for the last 3 years or so. Now, what bothered me is that Dr. Kelson had these drugs, morphine and something else, to be able to knock these guys out, but then he doesn't kill them. Like he literally drugs them just to get out of the situation and then goes back to his kind of area. And I'm sitting there thinking, why the fuck don't you just kill him? Like while he's sedated, fucking saw his head off. I don't know. It didn't make sense to me that he just drugged them and then left. But that's what we get. So we end up, Dr. Kelson ends up taking Spike, Mom, and the new baby to his area. And when we get to his kind of spot in the woods that he's living, we see these monuments, all these beautiful white monuments in the area. We don't know what they are at first because we're looking at them from a distance. Spike asks him, what is all that? And Dr. Kelson is so happy. He's like, I thought I was going to die and no one was ever going to ask me what these things are. And I was never going to be able to give my explanation. So he's so happy that someone finally asked him what they are. And as we get closer to them, we realize that they're towers of bones. Literally, there'll be a tower of just femurs. Then there'll be a tower of just tibias. And then a tower of just some other kinds of bones. And then finally, in the middle of this whole expanse of bone towers is the skull tower, which you guys all saw in the movie poster or the trailer if you watch the trailer. This beautiful monolith of skulls, nothing but skulls, all beautifully piled up to the sky. And Dr. Kelson then gives his explanation. He says, have you ever heard of memento mori? Now, memento mori is a Latin term that means remember, we all must die. It's also the name of my favorite Lamb of God song, so that's cool. So yeah, he basically explains that these are all monuments and that he's paying tribute to all the people, both infected and non-infected, because ultimately we're all the same. We're all people. Some of us got infected, some of us got killed by infected, but we're all still people. So he basically built these bone monuments as a tribute and as a reminder, again, of memento mori. Remember, we all must die. So Eric, like I said, after the doctor knocks out Samson, the alpha, he pulls Eric's head out of his hand and takes it with him. And basically asks Spike, did you know this person? Spike lets him know, yeah, he was a soldier. His name was Eric. And he actually saved my mom and I's life. He saved our lives. So the doctor's like, oh, okay, well, then let's pay tribute to him. What we see is the doctor takes the severed head, puts it in like a big steam pot, like a big one, like a 6 foot tall one, and basically steams or boils, I'm not sure which, all of the flesh off of the skull. He separates the spine from the skull. Obviously, that happens naturally once all the flesh kind of is rendered off of it. Then he pulls the skull out of the big steamer thing, and there's still a little bit of like pale flesh on it. So he starts peeling all the flesh on it. He ends up cleaning it with a hose. And then finally, the skull is perfectly clean, no blood, no flesh. And he hands it to Spike and he says, here, give our friend a good home. So basically, Spike is going to put the skull, he's going to add it to the spire, the skull spire, as a tribute again to Eric. So he picks a spot, he puts it up there. The guy, the doctor, Dr. Kelson, is like, good job. That's a nice spot. But then Dr. Kelson asks, so why did you guys come to see me? Is it because of the baby? I noticed that you have a newborn baby with you. Spike lets him know, no. It's actually a baby that came from an infected, but the baby's not infected. And the doctor instantly is like, my theory about the placenta is correct. And he doesn't say specifically in words what it is, but I mean, obviously it's the fact that a pregnant mother can become infected with the rage virus, but the placenta protects the child. So the child doesn't get the rage virus. So he is actually born normal as a normal human, even though he's born of an infected woman. So, the doctor's kind of fascinated with that. But then he finds out that, no, we're here because of Spike's mom, that she's sick. She's having these mental episodes. She's very weak. Her head always hurts. So obviously the doctor gives her an exam. Now, obviously 28 years after the zombie apocalypse has started, the doctor doesn't have any kind of equipment. He doesn't have any kind of drugs, medicines, anything. He just has his knowledge. So he gives Spike's mom a full exam, and then gives them the results together. And he basically says, "I'm very sorry to tell you, but from what I can tell, from the lumps that I'm feeling both in her upper arms and breasts, I'm pretty sure that your mother has cancer. It is almost definitely stage 4." Because the doctor said that she's got lymph nodes all over her breasts, her arms, and obviously in her brain because of all the mental lapses that she has. So the doctor lets them know that either you had breast cancer and it spread to your brain, or the other way around. You had brain cancer that spread out to the rest of your body. Either way, I'm very sorry to tell you, it is a terminal diagnosis. Spike, being 12 years old, probably has never heard of cancer. He doesn't know what the hell the doctor's talking about. He starts, begging the doctor, "You have to be able to do something. You're a doctor. There's some hospitals in the area. Maybe if there's drugs there, you tell me what you need and I'll go get it for you." Spike obviously trying to do everything he can to save his mother. Dr. Kelson lets him know, look, even back before the apocalypse, there was nothing that could be done for this form of cancer. It's terminal, and unfortunately, your mother's going to die. So that same night that they get the diagnosis, the doctor starts explaining to Spike that everyone dies, memento mori, remember, we all die. Well, he starts talking about the different ways to die, and he's like, not all ways of dying are bad. Sometimes people die pleasantly in their sleep and they feel no pain whatsoever. And he starts to walk away, and he grabs his blow dart, his blowgun. He loads it up with a dart, and Spike's back is to the doctor, but Spike's mother is looking at the doctor. She gives the doctor a nod. The doctor blows a dart into Spike's back, which of course, relaxes him. It doesn't knock him out completely, but it sedates him a little bit so that they can explain basically what's happening. And that is that mom is going to end her life. She's going to let the doctor end her life because she's already in pain and it's just going to get worse. And when Spike actually asks the doctor, "How long do you think she has?" all he could say is soon. It's going to happen soon. It's very advanced. It's already, I think he says it's already metastasized in her brain. So it is terminal. After kind of drugging Spike, mom takes the baby, puts it in Spike's hands, in his arms, and basically says, "I'm going to go now. Just always remember that I love you, and please take care of the baby. Don't let anyone hurt the baby. This baby deserves a chance at a normal life." We see the mom walk away. Like I said, Spike is so sedated, he's not knocked out, but he can't get up. Like he's holding the baby in his arms, but he's just so sedated that he can't get up. We see the doctor walk away with the mom. He blows a dart at the mom while she's kind of facing the other way. And then we see Spike pass out finally from the sedative that he was given. When he wakes up, Dr. Kelson shows up with a brand new fresh skull in his hand and basically puts it right next to Spike and says, "Here, find a spot for your mother. Find the best spot you can find because she deserves it." And that's when we get a very emotional scene where we see Spike taking his mother's skull, and he climbs up to the top of this spire, of the skull spire. And like I said, this thing's a good 12, 15 feet tall. It's a big one. But the doctor set it up so that there's posts so that you can put your feet on it and climb all the way to the top without disturbing any of the skulls on the way up. We see Spike climb the tower. Obviously, the emotional music starts welling up, along with many of the eyes in the theater. And he climbs up to the top. He puts the skull on top, but then he notices the sun start to rise. So he positions his mother's skull so that she could see the sunrise every morning. And that's the end of it. Literally, he says his last goodbye to his mother, kisses her skull. And I really like the scenes with the doctor because I feel like the doctor does a better job of explaining death to Spike than anybody in his village, not his father, not any of the elders. It's Dr. Kelson, the person that everybody thought was insane because he lives alone on the mainland during a zombie apocalypse. But as it turns out, he's the wisest, most intelligent person in this entire fucking movie. And like I said, the fact that he teaches. Oh, go ahead.
I just hope we get more in the next movie or somewhere in the rest of the trilogy of like why they cut off all contact with him, because like when the village, was it the dad that told the story or the old man?
It was
I
the
can't.
dad. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
when
the dad.
he gives an explanation of like why they kind of like abandon him, I can understand that like initially, like, oh, what's he doing down there with all those bodies? But it's like you were so terrified that you couldn't have like a 10-minute conversation. So I feel like there should
Yeah.
there should be more to, and like why does a doctor not just periodically like come bring like visit the like I hope we get
Hmm.
more, because like I can understand like what the doctor's doing, what he feels that, like I understand what I'm saying is like I understand his purpose of why he's doing what he's doing, but it's like all this time that's gone by, it's like why is that enough for him and the community to be totally excommunicated from each other? Because I'm assuming he
It's
knows
probably
about
just
the little bridge and he could just walk over there anytime uninfected and be like, hey, like, and talk. I mean,
I don't know. I don't know that he knows about the bridge, because don't forget, when he tells the story, he talks about how they were on a cliff looking down at the area where the doctor was, and that all they could see were bodies lined up in perfect rows. So they didn't know what the doctor was doing. Was he killing people? Was he utilizing them in like scientific experiments? They just didn't know. So I think just straight fear. They just avoided him after that. Jamie probably told the rest of the community what he saw, and the community just made the decision of, okay, we're leaving that guy alone. So that's my guess anyway. So I agree with you though. I hope we get more of them. I almost demand it. Like, I want to see more of Ray Fiennes' character, Dr. Kelson, in this.
yeah, because whatever
And
he's doing it
mhm,
correctly because he's surviving out there by himself this whole time. So like I can
exactly,
understand
like
like
I
I
said,
wouldn't go up
yep,
to him by myself, but like I'd take a team of like 5 grown adults with me and say, okay, we're gonna go have a chat because like we need to figure out what's going on. And he is like a
no, that's
doctor
valid.
too, so I would want the doctor as part of my community if possible. Now, if he truly went insane and we find out later that like, hey, here's a character that you really like in the first movie but there's more to it, then it'll make sense. So like I said, I'm gonna give it time
Sure,
in the next couple movies to like get more out of the whole situation.
absolutely, yeah, definitely. So basically, after Spike puts his mother's head at the top of the skull spire, literally instantly Samson shows up. And Samson obviously doesn't have the same issues with the rope bridge like that the rest of the zombies do. Since he's so coordinated and badass, he doesn't even need the rope bridge. He can just run across the river itself, and he's probably fine as long as the river's not too deep. And that's exactly what we see. We see Samson, the alpha, show up, and he's running so fast that, and so like focused, that he's knocking down some of these bone spires, the bone sculptures, statues, whatever you want to call them, that the doctor has put up. Eventually, we see Spike, the baby, and Dr. Kelson go into like a little hiding spot that he created that he thinks the alphas aren't able to get through. He's able to close the gate. It's like a metal gate, and that does successfully keep Samson out. Unfortunately, the rest of that space that they're in is just surrounded by wood. And eventually, Samson breaks through the ground into the hiding spot and grabs the doctor by like his waist, by like the waist of his pants. Obviously, the hole is only big enough for the alpha to get his arm through. So he's trying to pull the doctor through the hole, but he can't. So he's basically just pulling him up and slamming him into the hole. Eventually, he realizes he's not going to be able to get him out. So he puts him in a fucking rear naked choke. Yeah, this alpha must have been a UFC fighter at some point in his career, and he looks big enough to be one. That's for goddamn sure. So he's got the doctor in a rear naked choke. Spike, in his infinite wisdom, is able to grab some of the blow darts that the doctor has in a pouch on his hip, and put one in Samson's arm, which works instantly. It knocks out Samson. We hear Samson snoring. Once again, I'm screaming at the screen, kill him, just fucking kill him, saw his head off. I mean, tie him up with chains while he's out. I mean, I don't know. It really bothered me that he came up with this way to knock out these alphas, but then doesn't do anything about them, just leaves them alone to continue marauding, you know?
Yeah, and that kind of goes into my thing is like, is it possible that there is more to like this doctor than, because like the way we're in it, other than the story that the father tells, the rest of the way out, we're made to believe that the doctor's actually a pretty normal, like good human being. So I'm like, the fact that he's not killing the alpha twice when he had the easy chance, because that's, like you said, that's definitely what I would be doing if I had the ability to sedate them. The next thing I would be doing was decapitating them. And the fact that he doesn't do it twice, like, it's like, okay, maybe there is more to whatever he's got going on out there, and that's why the village at large is like, no, keep this guy away.
Yeah, I was thinking at the very least, even if you don't want to kill them, cut off their testicles, because that's where most of their rage is coming from, is from overabundance of testosterone in their bodies. I don't know that it would necessarily stop them or cure them or do anything like that, but you gotta figure it's at least gonna slow them down a little bit. But no, he just doesn't do anything. And what's funny is I wasn't even thinking about that, so Mike might have a valid point that maybe Dr. Kelson's not as good as we think he is at the end of this movie. So there you go. Well, now that puts more questions in my head about characters in this movie, but you know, they'll be answered soon enough. So after this situation with Samson, the doctor basically tells Spike, I think it's time for you and the baby to go home, which I thought was odd. Because again, why is the doctor sending a 12-year-old and a newborn baby out into this world by themselves to make a 2-day trip, by the way? Don't forget, it took them 2 days to get here. So it's going to take them 2 days to get back as well. And now he doesn't even have his mother with him. He's got a baby in a shopping cart. And, you know, and he's running out of arrows. That's the other thing. He barely has any arrows left. Don't forget, he's been using them this whole time. So what ends up happening is we see Spike walking the causeway with the child in the shopping cart, shopping basket, not one of the big carts with wheels on them, just one of those little handheld shopping baskets. We see Spike walking back towards the community. So obviously, as the viewer, we're assuming, oh, okay, Spike's going home. He's taking the baby with him and everything's going to be back to normal. But then we hear a voiceover, and it's Spike's voice, and he's reading a note that he wrote to his father. And he basically tells him, Dad, you know, I'm fine. I'm alive. I don't want to come home quite yet. I want to continue exploring this world and familiarizing myself, blah, blah, blah. Maybe not in exact words, but that's basically what he's implying, that he doesn't want to come home yet, that he wants to see more of the world. And he leaves the baby at the gate. So the next morning, the gate watchers hear crying. They hear a baby crying on the other side of the gate. They open the gate. There's the baby in the shopping basket, up on like a nail outside of the gate. The leader of the community, her name is Jenny, an older woman. She sees the baby, grabs it, brings it in, realizes that there's a note attached to it, and it's addressed to Jamie, Spike's father. And that's the note that we're hearing Spike read out loud. Once Dad reads the note, I don't know what the hell he's thinking about, but he just runs towards the entrance of the community, the gate, opens the gate, but it's high tide. It's not low tide. And he starts running on the water, and then it just cuts away. And that's the last we see of Jamie. So I don't know. I guess we'll see the continuation of his attempting to traverse the causeway during high tide in the next movie. And then we get our final scene of the movie. And like I said, this is the scene that's a little contentious to me. There's cool parts about it, but then there's elements that, like I said, it changes the tone of the movie a little bit. Basically, we see Spike by himself. He uses his bow and arrow. By the way, did you notice that the bows were different than the ones that he came with? So Spike has actually learned how to make arrows now. So he made his own arrows, and they're thicker than the ones that he had. They're like big fucking tree branches type arrows. He ends up seeing a regular infected, a runner, and the infected sees him and starts running towards him. Spike pulls out one of his badass fucking arrows and takes the infected down with one shot. But then he sees 2 or 3 more infected start running up the street. He's in the middle of cooking a fish, the fish that he caught on an open fire, but he decides to just grab his stuff and run away. What's funny is that when the infected run by, one of them goes after the fish, doesn't go after the kid. So these infected, like I said, they starved in 28 weeks later, but now in this movie, they've been around long enough. I feel like they know that they can eat animals and insects and basically anything that moves, they can get sustenance out of it, to the point where this infected recognized a fish cooking on an open spit, you know? So again, yeah, these infected are getting smarter. Anyway, Spike runs down the street to try to escape the infected, but then he comes to a roadblock, a man-made roadblock. It looks like somebody set up a bunch of boulders and rocks and concrete and whatever else and built a wall, just literally you can't get past it. Spike looks around, realizes, shit, I think I'm fucked. So then he grabs another arrow. As another infected starts running towards him, he, takes aim and hits it right in the fucking head, kills it instantly. More of the bullet time arrows, which, like I said, by this point in the movie have just annoyed the hell out of me. But then after he kills this one infected, someone shows up and says, well, who is this? And he basically, the guy, the mysterious guy is like, oh, that was very impressive, my friend. But if you listen, you'll hear that there's more infected coming, and I don't think you're going to be able to handle them all, despite your impressive skills. Like, this guy is basically complimenting Spike at every turn. So then suddenly a bunch of Swedish people show up. Literally, they're all blonde with the blonde eyebrows, so they're almost invisible, like Mia Goth. They're very Swedish. They're as Swedish as you can possibly be. The main guy, the one who's talking to Spike, says, would you like our assistance with the rest of the infected that are coming? Because again, I don't think you're going to be able to handle them. Spike says, yes, okay, I'll take the help. We see the main guy, the one who's speaking, he tells his crew, hold. And then finally he says, okay, go get him. And then this bunch of people, and like I said earlier, the music is literally from a kid show. It sounds like something that you would have heard on like Barney or the Teletubbies or something. I wouldn't be surprised if it was Teletubbies music, since we saw the Teletubbies at the beginning of the movie. And don't forget, let me keep that under my hat for now. Eventually, the group comes out. They're all fucking karate experts. They're flipping around. They're attacking these zombies. They're actually having fun. Like, they're smiling. And like I said, with the kooky music playing, just the tone of this scene it's very out of place for the rest of the movie. Eventually, they kill all the infected, except for one that they just kind of put up on a spike, Vlad the Impaler style. The infected is still alive, but he's just up on a spike. It's kind of interesting. And so when the fight is over, the leader walks up to Spike and says, hey, how you doing? My name is Jimmy. And he's wearing a very familiar necklace that we saw at the beginning of the movie. Yes, it is Jimmy from the cold open, the little kid who escaped the first day of the virus. His dad was the pastor. I forgot to mention that the pastor gave Jimmy that necklace, the very distinctive gold crucifix necklace. What's funny is that Jimmy now, 28 years later, has taken the crucifix and actually turned it upside down. So it's an upside down cross that he's wearing around his neck, looking very Satan-like. But he walks up to Spike and he says, my name is Jimmy. Spike extends his hand, they shake hands, and that's the end of the movie, my friends. That is a cliffhanger ending if I've ever seen one. Maybe not an ultra cliffhanger, like not as bad as the last Spider-Verse movie. For anybody who saw the last Spider-Man animated movie, there was a major cliffhanger at the end of that one because we knew that we were going to be getting another one in a couple of years. Well, obviously, with this one, we know that it's the start of a new trilogy. This is what I was talking about earlier, that I'm not satisfied with this ending. Like, this movie doesn't have an ending. It just stops. Spike meets Jimmy, and that's it. Our movie ends. So obviously, the movie is going to continue with the adventures of Spike and Jimmy and this group of fucking Swedish ninjas that are going around killing infected. I would assume that Aaron Taylor Johnson will be back in, the second or third movie. So yeah, that's it, folks. Kind of an open-ended ending, but that's what we got. Like I said, overall, I enjoy the movie. I genuinely do. It's not a 10 out of 10 by any stretch. Like I said, even as of right now, at the end of June, it's not in my top 10 for the year, but it's still a solid movie. If you're a fan of this franchise, there's no reason you won't like this one. You get a lot more of what you've already gotten. You get the 2 new types of infected, which is pretty cool. More gore, Mortal Kombat style fatalities. I mean, yeah, the movie has a lot to offer. Obviously, the ending left me sour because, like I said, even when there's going to be another movie, you could still give me a solid beginning, middle, and end. I always use the same movie as an example, and that's The Matrix. When the Wachowski brothers, they were brothers when they made the first Matrix. They weren't the Wachowski sisters yet. When the Wachowski brothers made The Matrix, they knew that if The Matrix was a success, that it would be a trilogy. Well, guess what? The first Matrix has a distinctive beginning, middle, and end, to the point where if they didn't make any more Matrix movies, that one standalone movie would have been perfect. But with this movie and Danny Boyle knowing that there's going to be more coming, leaving us with this open-ended ending, it's just not satisfactory to me. I don't like cinematic cliffhangers. I'm not a big fan of them. That's something that should stay on television. You want to do cliffhangers, do it on TV. Don't do a trilogy of movies with cliffhangers. And yes, I understand that The Empire Strikes Back kind of ended with a cliffhanger as well. That's the exception to the rule where it's so fucking good, I can accept it. But in general, I don't like cinematic cliffhangers. So like I said, I'll leave it at that. Good movie, just short of great, but still well worth your time. Despite the 2-hour runtime, I still think it's a fairly solid film. Decent pacing, good kills, beautiful cinematography, and some amazing performances from Jodie Comer, Ray Fiennes, Alfie Williams, and Aaron Taylor Johnson. So yeah, well worth your time and money, folks. So check it out. That's it for me.
Back to the Future 2 also kind of.
Oh, yeah, I forgot all about Back to the Future. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and there's lots of examples of cinematic cliffhangers, but I never like them. I think The Empire Strikes Back is the only example where I kind of like it, but that's, like I said, that's the exception that proves the rule.
The Matrix
I just don't like cinematic cliffhangers.
The Matrix having a legitimate ending is good since there was only one good Matrix movie, which was the first one.
I agree. I 100% agree.
So thank goodness they gave a proper ending.
It's like the Wachowskis, when they became women, kind of lost the ability to make great movies. That's not a sexist comment, folks. I'm not making a negative statement. I'm just saying that's the perception. As soon as they came out as transgender women, I feel like their movies kind of lost a little bit, but that's just me. Maybe
I honestly don't even know of anything they've done other than the Matrix movies.
They did. Damn it. They did something for Disney that I can't remember. Oh, fuck. I mean, like I said, I don't follow them enough to be familiar with their filmography. I
don't even know what they did after The Matrix.
Yeah. Same here. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but I know I've seen other stuff that they've done. It's almost always big budget, grand stories, but they haven't done anything as cool as the first Matrix. So, yeah.
The second best Matrix is the Animatrix. If you saw those,
by
those
far,
really
that might actually be my favorite Matrix because there's a couple of segments there that I could watch on a loop. I fucking love them.
Yeah. I remember really liking those, and it had me so much looking forward to the sequels, and then nope.
Right? that animated movie wrote a check that the franchise could not cash, unfortunately.
All right.
Okay.
Well, that's gonna wrap up the episode and our discussion on 28 years later. What else we got, if anything? Venom. Something.
Nothing too new. Like I said, last episode, Creature Comforts, episode 39 is our latest episode. We've picked our movie for episode 40, so that episode should be out. Fingers crossed it'll be out before the end of the month. We still haven't recorded it, but hopefully, we'll get to it soon enough. Let's see what else we got. And then the Crystal Lake gift shop got postponed. And then the main show also got postponed. So yeah. And then I don't have any guest spots to speak of. So yeah, it's still just Creature Comforts, episode 39. And then, fresh cuts every week. That's pretty much all I have to talk about right now.
All right, Dawn.
Yeah, not much else either. Latest Creature Comforts. We picked the movie, didn't we? Or
yes. Yes.
I'd have to check. I don't know if that was something he picked for sure, or if that was something he just kind of said in jest. But I'm
pretty sure we're doing it because I already watched it, so we better be doing it.
Okay, cool. I'm not opposed against it. It was one that I've kind of been, pushing for a while, but I didn't know if it was official or not. So I never know with him.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yes.
Okay, cool. So yeah, like I said, the movie's picked. I think we're just waiting on the month change, so that way we can get the episode for that out.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. The June episode is already out. I forgot. We did it. So my turnaround for the episode this time was monumental. I think I did it in like 3 days. And I know that sounds like it's still a long time to edit a podcast. That's got to be the least amount of time I've ever taken. It's not because I'm bad at editing, folks. It's just I have a lot of shit in my life. Despite not having a full-time job right now, I still fill my time with as much stuff as I can that could make me little bits of money here and there. So yeah, I don't have as much free time as you would think an unemployed guy does, but yeah, sadly.
But yeah, like I said, if what Derek picked is true, then waiting on the month change to get the new episode out. The roundtables that I've recorded over the year are still live streams, so they haven't been turned into podcasts. So waiting on those to get released, and just waiting on the new one to that I'm prepping for now to. I think we're still a couple of months out from that one even being discussed, because these are usually like 3-4 months at a time, because we usually record like 3 or 4 of them a year. So I think we're still like 2 or 3 more months away from it being discussed about when we're going to record that. So I'll drop more details about that when time comes. But yeah, other than that, nothing else.
All right, so nothing yet for me, but by the time we record the next episode of Fresh Cuts, as long as nothing gets postponed, potentially there's going to be another guest spot of me on the Sin Bin show, Crystal Lake gift shop, main show, and then I'll just go ahead and throw in the next episode of Fresh Cuts, whatever that ends up being. So, like I said, if nothing gets postponed, this is going to be one of the busier weeks of podcasting for myself that I've had in a while, just because it's been a while since I've had like a block of days where like I have that many potential shows recording, which is not any type of problem or anything. It's just I was just thinking in my head like, wow, I actually looks like this week's shaping up more the end of the week through the weekend type thing, not the entire week. But and speaking of the next episode of Fresh Cuts, is there a wide release? I can't remember.
Yeah, not one I'm ultra excited about, but yeah, Megan 2.0 drops this Friday.
Right before you said it, I just remembered.
Yeah, exactly. I accidentally saw the trailer for this, folks. You guys know I don't watch the trailer. I accidentally saw the trailer for this, and I am not excited for it.
I was
at
gonna
all.
say before you just like said that you saw the trailer, because I was like, I've seen it too many times because of all the times it's played in a theater, and like I barely even get the vibe that they're really going for horror in this one anyway.
Yeah,
Now,
seems more action. Yep.
yeah, now what that means as far as us doing an episode, I mean, we can figure that out later, but like from the first time I saw the trailer, I was just like, this like
Mm.
it doesn't even look like they're like
Well, I
trying to
mean,
like half it. It just looks like an
right.
action.
I
Like,
mean, it's kind of
I
feels
mean,
more like
I think
Terminator to Terminator 2 to me.
yeah, kind of.
I was actually going to say Happy Death Day to Happy Death Day to You. Because we did Happy Death Day to You because it's a sequel to a horror movie, but I would solidly say the second Happy Death Day. I'm sorry, Happy Death Day. The second Happy Death Day to me was not horror; it was straight sci-fi. Whereas the first one is solidly a slasher. So, I mean, we still did that movie. So I would imagine we're still going to do Megan, even if it turns into Tron meets Terminator, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, like it costs me nothing to see it because of my Regal pass,
Right.
but like if we get to the weekend and there's like, oh my God, this dropped on Shutter or something else that's really good, I'm also not
Oh,
opposed to
sure.
doing that instead. So we'll just keep
I
it
don't think
open
there's
ended for
anything
now.
dropping on Shutter until the end of the month.
Yeah.
Well, that
I
would
mean,
be the end of the
regardless, I'm going to
month.
see Megan.
Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna watch the movie regardless, and we'll decide. I'm leaning towards we're probably going to do it. I mean, it is the biggest release of the week, so.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
we'll see. I'm
Yeah.
open to something else too, since I'm not a fan of this franchise. And after seeing the trailer for the second one, I'm not really that excited to see it, but I'm still gonna see it. It's almost like I have to. It's in my DNA. If there's a horror movie in the theaters, I got to see it. So,
All right. Well, that said, thanks everyone for listening to another episode of Fresh Cuts. We'll be back in about a week with another one. Let's say bye, listeners.
Later.
somebody get those alphas the pants that the Incredible Hulk wears, because those things never wear out.
Doesn't he change those every time out? He
Oh
pulls
yeah.
out.
Oh, bad joke. But yes, you are correct.
Get him a pair of the gross pants that Kyle Reese found in Terminator.
Oh God! Putting on a homeless man's sweatpants with no underwear. Yuck! Well, on that note, I gotta go throw up.
Peace.